Here at Square Table Gaming, we've talked about the Bloody Fingers and their goals. However, there is one amongst their group that our community has asked us to dive into more than any other. This tarnished hails from the land of reeds and wields two blades, a wakizashi in his left hand, and in the right, the infamous Rivers of Blood. This man traveled the world looking for worthy opponents to test his skills against, and upon reaching the lands between, found a land full of challenges. This man became a legend in his own right, a name feared throughout the lands, a swordsman of unparalleled strength, wearing a wooden mask depicting an old man baring his teeth. This man was known as the Bloody Finger, Okina. Today we will be discussing this demon of a swordsman and taking a look at his place in the lands between. Before we dive into Okina, we wanted to take a second to ask you to please subscribe to our channel and hit that bell so you're always notified when we launch a new Elden lore video. We love the community you've helped us build up to this point and want to continue the conversations in the comments about Elden Ring's lore. Comment about the topics you'd like us to make videos on and subscribe so you don't miss out if we choose your request. With that out of the way, let's talk about Okina. The land of reeds is known for the prowess of their swordsmen. They primarily study katanas and polearms, and what little we can learn of their home is disturbing. The land of reeds' helm tells us, "The land of reeds has long been locked in a miserable civil war, during which time it has remained alienated from the cultures of its neighbors. Little wonder that the entire nation has succumbed to the blood-soaked madness, or so it is said. So the land of reeds is embroiled in war, a breeding ground for particularly skilled swordsmen. Those tarnished that have found their way to the land of reeds seem to have made a name for themselves, as the ones who answered the call of grace are feared across the lands. One of these men was known as a demon, but he may have lived a much more noble life before reaching this place. The man known only as Okina was once lauded as a great swordsman across the land of reeds. We can discern this from the description of the white reed set, worn by the Inaban, head disciples of the great swordsman Okina. The Inaba traveled in pursuit of not only the master who abandoned them, but also proper deaths, won honorably through hard-fought combat. To be a white reed is to seek death, fitting for the Inaba, who desired nothing more than to die by the sword. So Okina once had a school of disciples under his tutelage. It's possible he may have even led these forces in skirmishes within the land of reeds. After all, in a nation under constant civil war, an elite group of swordsmen likely saw battle often. However, the longer Okina studied the blade, the more he questioned why he was fighting in this land. What was the point of this war? And why was he using his time to sharpen others' skills when he could focus on himself? The name Okina is not the true name of this swordsman. That name has been lost to the ages. The Okina mask tells us it is a wooden mask that depicts an old man baring his teeth, the source of the sobriquet of the great swordsman of the land of reeds. The word sobriquet essentially means nickname, which tells us Okina is the name of the mask, not the man, and was taken as a nickname by this swordsman. It goes on to tell us, the more he sharpened his mind, the more the absurdities of the world came into stark relief. And so Okina renounced it all and rose to a higher plane. There was only himself, his katana, and its mastery. Before long, Okina became a demon of a swordsman. We believe it's likely that this change in his demeanor, this decision to renounce the earthly world and focus only on battle, may have been made before Okina even reached the lands between. At this point, the call of grace would simply be an invitation to test his skills against the most powerful beings he had ever known to exist. No mere men, but the gods themselves. Okina took with him two weapons into the lands between, a wakizashi and the infamous Rivers of Blood. Weapon of Okina, swordsman from the land of reeds, a cursed weapon that has felled countless men. The wakizashi is a short sword with a tempered pattern on the blade, a weapon unique to warriors of the land of reeds. While others use this sword as an auxiliary weapon, Okina used it in his offhand so as to further draw blood from his opponents. It's due to the literal rivers of blood Okina himself spilled throughout his life in pursuit of proving his strength against the strongest opponents he could find that Mohg, Lord of Blood, took such a keen interest in him. The description of rivers of blood tells us, when Mohg, the Lord of Blood, first felt Okina's sword and madness upon his flesh, he had a proposal: to offer Okina the life of a demon whose thirst would never go unsated. After reaching the Lands Between, it's possible that, like us, Okina was met by White Mask Vare. While there is never any mention of Okina having a maiden, it's possible his reputation for letting blood preceded him, and upon meeting the man, Vare immediately stoked his interest in Mohg, the Lord of Blood, and the mission of the Bloody Fingers. Seeing this as a way to test his blade against Tarnished throughout the Lands Between, he would have taken Vare up on his offer and begun slaughtering those whose worlds he invaded, striking down warrior after warrior, adding to the pools of blood from which Mohg drew his strength. Perhaps his intention was to make Mohg as strong as possible before he could meet him in battle, as if he were fattening a pig for the slaughter. After enough Tarnished fell to his blade, he was presented with a talisman, the Lord of Blood's exaltation, and was able to travel to the Mohgwyn dynasty to face this so-called God of Blood. A fierce battle ensued between Mohg and Okina, where Okina was able to lay his blade against Mohg's flesh. Upon feeling the sting of his blade and the madness hiding behind these eyes, covered by a wooden mask, Mohg, either out of respect or possibly desperation, offered him a gift. Okina would become Mohg's blade, the personal swordsman of a god, and he would give him the life of a demon, a bloody finger feared above all others as the greatest swordsman in the Lands Between, wielding a weapon infused with the cursed blood of Mohg's palace. We believe after this battle, Okina's blade, so aptly named Rivers of Blood, was given the Corpse Piler ability by being infused with the blood of Mohg himself, effectively making Okina even more of a force to be reckoned with. While it's likely that Okina did not see himself as truly beholden to anything but his pursuit of the sword, he did see the opportunity for new power, and any power he could utilize would bring him that much closer to true mastery of his blade. We can encounter Okina in only two places in the Lands Between. The first is before we have any way of knowing of his connection to Mohg. During the Radahn Festival, we can summon a number of powerful warriors to fight by our side against the Star Scourge himself, and among their ranks is Okina. As we know, Okina's purpose is to fight the strongest warriors he can find, to push himself to the absolute limit in his pursuit of power and mastery of the blade, and who better to test his skills against than a literal legend, Radahn. While we're sure he would have preferred to fight this god one-on-one as he did with Mohg, the terms of the Radahn Festival made this impossible, as all warriors were allowed to pursue the general at once. The only other time we can encounter Okina is in the Mountaintop of Giants near the Church of Repose. This is where Okina waits to invade those strong enough to make their way to the Giant's Forge. He springs his attack as we approach the church, a building meant to be a place of rest for weary travelers, which he has turned into a trap for any who have proven their strength to make it this far through the Lands Between. We believe Okina knows to invade Tarnished in this place thanks to Mohg. It would make sense that Mohg, being a member of the royal family, would know that the only way to become Elden Lord was to light the Tree ablaze, and the only way to do that was with the Giant's Forge. By bestowing this knowledge to Okina, he essentially gave him a foolproof way to find the strongest opponents he possibly could. Of course, this doesn't exactly work out for Okina, as he must do battle with our Tarnished, and ultimately, we take his cursed blade for ourselves. Then again, perhaps this is what Okina would have wanted. His disciples, the White Reeds, sought an honorable death through battle. Their purpose was to fight until they had nothing left, and perhaps, before he was twisted into the demon that we now know him as, this too was Okina's purpose, the pursuit of strength and an honorable death, which he finally finds at our hands. Thank you for joining us today as we explored Okina, the Bloody Finger, swordsman of the Land of Reeds. For better or worse, Okina and his blade, Rivers of Blood, have left an indelible mark on the world of Elden Ring, especially within its PvP community. That aside, Okina has piqued our interest in the people of the Land of Reeds. This land is wildly interesting, and we'd love to learn more about its everlasting civil wars. Perhaps the people of this land are closer to us than we know. After all, Corpse Piler does utilize animations from Sekiro. Hopefully future updates will pull the curtain back on this land, maybe even letting us visit it ourselves. Comment letting us know what your theories about the Land of Reeds are. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss out on our content. We look forward to seeing you again for more Elden Lore.